we're going to go from New York City to small town Texas because we're talking about a lot of great ideas, and I've been participating in CNU now for about the same amount of time, and I really appreciate all the wonderful ideas, but the question is, how do we pay for it? And I focus on communities of under 20,000 people. And so most of the communities that I'm working with are under 10,000 people. Right now I live in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and our stadium, our football stadium, holds 100,000 people. On any one given weekend, we have more people coming to watch a football game than 10 of the cities that I work with in Texas. And that sort of puts things in perspective for you. I want to do a little bit of crowd surveying, and if you've had to listen to me lecture you over cocktails about how many disasters there are, you don't get to answer. But just polling the audience, how many federally declared disasters, those are the big giant ones, right? We've heard about the Harvey and the Rita, Irma, Ike. How many disasters do you think that there are like in a year? Come on, throw out a number. 10. 10 a year. How many? 25 a year. So the disasters that you're thinking of in your mind, do those disasters have names? No? What are the disasters that don't have names? Tornadoes? Maybe an earthquake, fire?
Mudslides.
Flood, mudslide. Okay, great. So the highest number that I heard was 10. So if we think 20, how many? 80. So since I hear a lot of new urbanists talk about their work in Katrina. A lot of work was done in Katrina. A lot of work was done around the recovery work. That was in 2005. So this was DR, which is disaster recovery number that's assigned by FEMA, number 1,603.
For the year.
That's the number that was assigned to Katrina. That's its disaster number. Each disaster gets a number. And so flip to the next slide. There have been 1,482 disasters that people like me have worked since you did Katrina. We've dealt with housing, we deal with failed infrastructure, we deal with businesses that are gone, and the question is, how does that look then? So go to the next one. 1 disaster per week. That's what we're averaging. In the time between Harvey hitting Texas and, Irma was the next one, right? Irma hitting Florida, we had 4 declarations in between those two that you never heard of. There's Georgia, I think it's Georgia, I think Mississippi, Iowa, and Idaho. Iowa and Idaho, catastrophic rain events, mudslides, flash flooding. The disasters that everybody likes to go outside and you get the people on TV with the wind blowing them away and they're anchored to the tree and they're like, look, we're reporting from the eye of the hurricane. Nobody really cares to report about a rainy Wednesday that devastates a community of 5,000 people. It's just not interesting news. So I think the first thing is an awareness of the magnitude of disasters that are happening. And so when you're talking about rebuilding cities and building them back better, the question is how? It looks very different in New York City than it looks in Hitchcock, Texas, that you're never going to hear about it, right? Harvey hit Houston. How many other communities, does anyone have an idea of how many cities and counties were devastated in Texas alone? I'm not even talking outside of Texas. Just in Texas, how many? Throw me a number. 2,200. Go to the next slide.
360.
So these are the disasters by year. Go to the next slide. Harvey, next slide. 229 cities and counties that you've never heard of. I bet you've probably heard of 3. Like they're the ones that were like, especially like the one where they got the hurricane force winds and it looks nice and destroyed, so that makes a really good photo op. 80% of the affected communities are under 20,000 people. They have a city staff of under 30. There is no planning department. There's one man or woman who is the floodplain manager. Sometimes they know they're the floodplain manager, sometimes they don't. They are the building code enforcement person, and sometimes they run the feed shop down the road. And they're usually the person whose house was also destroyed. So they're expected to run recovery, right, and know all the federal regulations. And here comes FEMA, to save you, here's FEMA. Here's your book of federal regulation. You need to comply with all of this stuff. New York City, I worked Sandy recovery. Thank goodness for New York State Homeland Security deploying consultants to help tiny jurisdictions and small private nonprofits. What would you say the legal team is for New York City? I mean, just, there we got a number, go ahead, a floor. Yeah, a lot of lawyers, and they spend a lot of time working on the Code of Federal Regulation as it relates to disaster recovery. Do you know what the lawyer for Hitchcock, Texas, a town of 6,000 looks like? He's about 70. His son has picked up most of the practice. It's a family business, right? So you got a lot of people in the city that are like generationally working in the same positions. They've never heard of the Code of Federal Regulation. They comply with like Texas state law. So complying with the federal rules is an impossibility. So here's what dictates recovery. Go to the next slide. So how do we build back better? The wonderful, well-intentioned, big-hearted planners say we want to help these small communities, we love them, we love small towns, strong towns, Main Street. There's a great opportunity to do something better. The right timing, philosophically, is several months later, right? Where their PTSD has started to calm down. People actually have maybe a bed to sleep in. Right now they're sleeping in homes without floors, without walls, because there are no hotel rooms to stay in. So what it looks like when you get ready to come in, which is the right time to come in, the decisions that dictate whether or not they have any federal money to spend, those decisions are made in the first 3 weeks. If you cannot get to a community in the first 3 weeks, because what small towns are really good at is getting her done, getting her fixed and getting her put back ready for that next flood. So what is happening in the first 3 weeks after a disaster, every week in the United States, a small community is impacted by a disaster and they have an opportunity to build back better. But their city staff of 30 has never been and seen lectures like we have here. They've never worked Sandy recovery. They don't know what a $1 billion project, like that's, build a new city. We'll just move the city for $1 billion. So where does the money come from for them? FEMA. They're gonna have a massive capital infusion of money from FEMA, right? FEMA, eligible damages. You've got a damaged road, FEMA's gonna give you money to put it back. You've got a damaged city hall, FEMA's gonna give you money to put it back. Sure, if you follow federal regulations. That should be easy enough to do for every community, unless you're the city secretary and now it's your job to do disaster recovery. And that's who I'm working with. I've been volunteering my time because they can't afford an expensive consultant. Even if they can afford an expensive consultant, they don't know how to procure a consultant to federal guideline standards. So it wouldn't be eligible for reimbursement anyway. They don't even know that people are in a room like this. It would not even occur to them. What they need to do is get a building mucked out and get the drywall put back. And they're gonna do it really fast. I got into a community 2 weeks, it wasn't quite 2 weeks after the flood waters had receded. They already had everything stripped back out and the drywall put back. I know that they did not do mold remediation. I know that they did not treat for mold inside those walls. I know that they had Jerry, who is Susan's cousin, put that drywall back because that's their drywall person. And he's always done the drywall. Anytime we need a hole patched, he comes and does it, and he got that drywall put right back up. And he did a really good job. They didn't procure him properly. They're getting no money for that. So the money that they did spend, they're not getting reimbursed at 90%. 90 cents on the dollar is what this disaster is running. And Houston will have lots of fancy consultants getting their 90 cents on a dollar back. Hitchcock will not. So I slide in there, and they've got a bunch of walls ripped out in City Hall, and they say, hey, we got Jerry coming to put the drywall back tomorrow, and I say, stop. No, Jerry can't put the drywall back. You gotta procure Jerry's services. You gotta get a bid from a hub. What's a hub? Historically underutilized businesses. That's a federal requirement. You gotta call hubs. Well, I think Jerry's the only guy that does this in town. I don't know. Is he a small business? I don't know. So the first thing I have to do is educate them on procurement policy. And they're like, FEMA says, consult your lawyer, consult your city attorney. And I go and I meet with the city attorney and they say, what do I need to read? What is this? Who can help me? I spent 6 months in New York City trying to find a law firm that specialized in the Code of Federal Regulation, which is 2 CFR 200, which dictates procurement. I called every major global law firm to help these tiny little nonprofits that I was helping. All of them said, we don't do that, it's too complicated. Call a boutique law firm in DC, they're the only ones that do it. No wonder no one can comply with federal regulations when the only law firms that do this are here in DC, and they're tiny little boutique firms. So they're not getting the money. And then the next thing they do, they say, okay, well, we've got it put back. And the feds say, oh, that's too bad. You could have mitigated. You could have built back different, but you already put your drywall back. You already patched up your road. Oh, and by the way, that's what they call it. They patch a hole where a road has fallen in. They put some patch on it, and they say, we fixed it. What do you think caused it to slump in the first place? Sitting underwater for 7 days with a river running across it, perpendicular. They have no idea when the floodwaters receded that there is damage that they can't see with their eyes. There is this latent damage hiding. And so I have to go through communities and say, hey, have you guys seen any holes opening up around town? And they're like, yeah, we totally have. There's one the size of a car. We saw that. We got it. Don't worry, Jerry's filling that hole. And I'm like, please stop Jerry from it. Jerry's so efficient. He does everything for the town. We got to get this guy procured. Also, we have to photograph the hole, and we have to measure the hole. And it's not the hole that you can see that's your problem. It's the sinkholes that are going to open up a year from now and suck in portions of your street. And you didn't identify those in your first 30, 60 days with FEMA. You've got a cutoff period. You have 60 days with FEMA to identify all of your damages. It's not a lot of time for a community who's still standing there with wet trousers saying, like, what do? We are missing half our homes. Half our small businesses are closed and we don't know what to do. We don't have fancy consultants. We've got Jerry. Like, he's the one out there doing everything. So we've got a lot working against them, right? Where the money's coming from the feds, which you've got the federal bureaucracy that goes with that they don't know the rules of. You've got a timeline that is unrealistic for a small community to be able to deal with. And now the obstacles that are set against them is they didn't identify their damages, they didn't get any hazard mitigation, they didn't get money back for the stuff that they did, and then they don't have anyone to help them fight the fact that FEMA just told them that everything was ineligible. Or even worse, they had a really terrible FEMA project worksheet specialist who gave them money, pushed it on through, and the Office of the Inspector General comes back 2 years later and says, I'm sorry FEMA told you that this was eligible. It isn't. You owe that money back. $300,000 from a community of 5,000 people. I mean, you've heard getting blood from a turnip. Where do you think that money's coming from? They don't have that money. I've got communities right now that have to do debris removal. They don't have the money to pay a company to come and do debris removal so that they can get cars through their little tiny streets. They don't have budgets for this sort of thing. And so when I was talking to my dear friend Priska, railing about how all these great new urbanists are going to want to help, and they're going to come in, and it's going to be too late, and there's going to be no money, and we can't fix these places back. And she was like, oh, well, what do you think we should do? And I was like, well, what's really needed is the first 3 weeks, we need to have a team of people that mobilize and get in there early and get them advice on how to do procurement, how to look at their comprehensive plan, look at their hazard mitigation plan, say, hey, you got this long list of damaged elements. Let's go out in the field with your public works guy, and let me drive around, let's see if we can find more damage that you don't know to look for. So get you a good estimator, because y'all don't have any idea how much money you are leaving on the table. So you got to identify damages, you got to get good estimates, and then you've got a planner who works with them to say, you've got this long list of damages. Here's your comp plan. You wanted that road different anyway. Good thing it's gone. Let's not put it back the way it was. You've got a downtown district revitalization plan you're looking at here. Cool, we're going to have to rip out sections of road for a bigger culvert. When we put the bigger culvert in, it's going to serve like a little tiny bridge area. Do we need sidewalks or bike paths? Y'all have been talking about wanting to do that. How do we incrementally go in immediately, stabilize them in the short term, so that we create a placeholder for when their minds are out of the PTSD 3-4 months later, and they're ready for a planner to come in and help them with a comp plan, which most of them don't have anyway. They're ready to think about this sort of thing, that there will be money being held with FEMA to be able to pay for the thing. So in Hitchcock, Texas, when I went in and I stopped Jerry from putting back the drywall, they're still working out of City Hall. They're working out of the City Hall. They're so mad at me because now there's no drywall anywhere in the building, and they just got open doors and walls everywhere. So if I had, what they're doing now, knowing that they have an opportunity, they didn't put back the drywall. What that has done is it's taken, the building is only worth $140,000. They have about $100,000 worth of damage, which made them a substantial loss. Okay, a substantial damage determination means they couldn't have put the drywall back legally the way it was anyway. They've got to come to current codes and standards, including floodplain. Their floodplain means they've got to elevate 23 inches in this building. Well, it's a 1950s slab on grade, so, you know, good luck with that. So the good news is that because of all these federal requirements now that they know about, we're capturing the cost for what it would cost to elevate it out of the floodplain. Lots of money, by the way, to elevate it out of the floodplain. That's a good thing in this scenario because then we get to use up to double that amount of money to get them out of the floodplain. And they were like, I said, if we were going to move City Hall, now that you know you can do it if you don't put back the drywall, now you may have up to $400,000, $500,000 worth of reimbursement coming at you from the feds to move City Hall. It was a crappy City Hall anyway, 4,500 square feet. It was on the side of a highway. There was nothing near it. I said, I've never been to Hitchcock before. I know they have a lot of rattlesnakes after a flood, but other than that, I don't know a lot about this town. Where's your downtown? I don't know, I think you're in it. I was like, well, that's unfortunate. Do you have other civic buildings? Where's the police station? Where's the fire department? Where's the library? Oh, that's all right over here. And so I get in the public works truck and I go with the city secretary and her husband, who runs public works, of course. And we go and we drive to this cute little street, very narrow. No, they haven't bothered with any striping on the roads. You know, they don't need to worry about stuff like that. No sidewalks. Beautiful old growth Texas trees. Gorgeous little residential neighborhood. Here's the cute little library. Here's a little historic home that's like our museum. And then there's the fire department, the police department, all right there. All they need is some landscaping and some sidewalks and to plop City Hall right there and to put up a sign, welcome to downtown Hitchcock. And a very little light footprint of putting this place back so that they actually have a downtown. So now Hitchcock, Texas is looking at their long-term recovery in a much different way to building back a real city with real economic opportunities, all because we didn't let Jerry put back the drywall. Woo! Right? So this is where, flip to the next slide. So this is typical town Texas that I am working with. This is there are all 230 some odd communities, most of them with low to mod populations of over 50%. That's a lot of poor people. You want to talk about your poor communities at risk? Most of the time, the neighborhoods that flood are the poor communities of color. The great equalizer in this flood was everybody flooded. So now the people that lived in the nicer neighborhood give a crap about this too, right? There's an opportunity here, but I need your assistance because you're the planners, right? I know the policy piece. I know what damage is according to the feds. You all can look at plans and I can say, here, we've got some good estimates. We've comprehensively identified all of their damages. Where can we match up some opportunities to do better? And then advise them on the policy of how to do it correctly so that they're going to get that reimbursement 90 cents on the dollar, just like Houston will. So you can, I want to thank CNU. I want to thank, where is Lynn? Thank you very much, Lynn. I was running around like a crazy person, calling every organization I knew, saying I need volunteers, I need money because I am just going out here on my own. I know what needs to be done. I've got connections on the ground in Texas. I'm in these small communities. We've been invited in by them. They're desperate for assistance. So it's not a scenario like with Katrina 2000 disasters ago, right? This is a new scenario where we're invited in, they're begging for help, and we really need 3 areas of expertise. We need latent flood identification as it relates to infrastructure and proper estimating, especially fast field estimating, damages to buildings, etc. We need people that can work with them on basic administration. So that they don't even know. Sometimes it's the fire chief who's at the volunteer fire department who's supposed to be entering this stuff. Everything's digitalized with FEMA. They don't even have Adobe. They can't even do spreadsheets and stuff. So we need administrative assistance, and I can teach you the basics of federal guidelines that they need to know not to make missteps. And then we need planners to be able to sit down and look through what pitiful little bits of comprehensive plans they have and hazard mitigation plans. And this is an opportunity to say, oh, Hitchcock, we read your plan for 1982. It's so great. We've seen some opportunities of maybe some things some assets you didn't even realize you had. And give them your global worldly expertise and then align it with those damages so that we can say, don't put back your drywall. Here's an opportunity for a new downtown. And let's do something, right? We've got a lot of land that floods frequently. But we do have high and dry land in a lot of these communities. The question is, where is it gonna go? And if we're gonna make it go somewhere, who's gonna pay for it? Let's have the feds pay for it, because that's what they're lined up to do if you follow the policy. So you can go to cnu.org and you can register to volunteer. If you'd like to, this is fast, rapid, I mean, we're already 5 weeks into this disaster. So we've already missed the opportunity in a lot of small communities. They've already got her done. She's already fixed back. The key is FEMA hasn't gotten to them yet. So we can still help them identify, we can call it temporary repairs, right? All those potholes that you filled, let's call those temporary repairs for FEMA. That triggers something else. Then we can still capture the money to actually pull up your road and get your foundations back laid properly. And maybe do the road design back in a different way. So there's still a chance to help communities. I haven't even gotten to Florida yet. There is, and again, I didn't get to, right? I haven't gotten to Florida yet, so mobilizing efforts, this sort of thing, my goal is to launch the free assistance support team, FAST. The FAST team is a strategy that can be replicated and duplicated across Florida, Iowa, Idaho, Georgia, and the disasters that we will have by the time we leave this building today. Right? So this is y'all's opportunity to, if you say, how can we help? It went sideways after Katrina. This is how you can help. This is how you help immediately, and you create the monetary placeholder to do the better thing, and then you get into the communities and you help them have a better comprehensive plan and vision for the future anyway. So that's my call to action for all of you, is to help them.